turns and curves and sin, murder, theft, jealousy, all the stuff we aren't familiar with in our families, right? None of us have those things. There are many blessings we receive from being a part of God's family, but there are also responsibilities. With family comes a large responsibility, and that could be the root of some of the issues and problems. A biological family traditionally is defined by blood origin and common ancestry. Jesus gave a new definition for a new kind of family, God's family. We sometimes forget Jesus had a biological family. Okay? Mary was his mother, Joseph was his stepfather, and the only glimpse that we have of Jesus' childhood was in the temple when he went astray and his parents were looking for him and he said, "I'm about my father's business." Other than that, we have nothing about Jesus' childhood. Not Jesus kicking a ball or something, or something in school or something that you would relate to a child. But we go on to see that his brother James accepted Christ and actually led a church, in fact, and that was his brother. Jesus used the presence of his natural family to teach us that there is another family, much larger family, in which you and I can find acceptance, and that's the family of God. So, I asked you words that you associated with the word family. You guys know I love interaction. And I went on the internet and I searched long and hard for the definition of family, I guess, as society claims it. Anybody want to give a swing at it? The definition of family? How would you define it without looking on your phone? Good evening, sis. You want to attack that one? Definition of family. Okay, you was freestyling that. I saw your eyes were just rolling. she was freestyling. But yeah, that's good. The family is the foundational institution of society ordained by God. It is constituted by marriage and is composed of persons related to one another by marriage, blood, or adoption. The family is a fundamental institution of human society. Now, we Christians believe that the family life is important because it's the first place where we often find love. First place you find love is in the family. Should be, right? But the base of it, that's where it should originate, where you should learn about love, accepting love, giving love unconditionally. We also learn about companionship, and this word again here, forgiveness. One thing we learn about in families is forgiveness. That's probably one of the toughest tests. Families educate children to become responsible adults as well as better parents. So, you guys know I love numbers. So I wanted to look up information on the family, statistics. I was curious. What would be considered the typical American family today? The majority, 50% are living with a single parent, 38% are living with two parents, 22% of which are living with two parents who are both in the first marriage. Some 9% are living with remarried parents, and 7% are residing with parents who are cohabitating. I guess the U.S. Census, they take this information. But there are the number of different classifications where, for many years, there were only 5 or 6. There were over 10,000 different terms of the family that's in society right now. The nuclear family is still the most common, but there are millions of households in the United States with a different family structure. Based on the data from a 5-year American Community Survey study between 2010 and 2014, again, there were over 10,000 different types of households in America. Anybody familiar with the term nuclear family? Right? Nuclear family. As of 2019, the U.S. Census Bureau counted that 83.4 million families were in the United States, and the average family consisted of 3.1 persons, down from 3.7 persons in the 1960s. I wonder how they always get the point of a, infant child, a fraction, so that's 6/10 of a child. Okay. How many of us are from small families? I am. How many of us are from small families? Yeah, by size. No, yeah, well, four is close to the nuclear, but I'm talking huge. I'm talking about you got one of those families where you got to get T-shirts made when y'all have events, yeah, and everything is a group decision, right? Okay, that's a huge family. That's your family? Right. Okay. Yeah, my family's pretty small. You got family coming from, you got family, you got more family coming in? Oh, they just left. Okay. All right, I think I missed that one. All right. So we get the general idea, right? Nuclear family. This family consists of two parents. The nuclear family was long held and esteemed by society as being the ideal situation to raise children. Children in nuclear families receive strength and stability from two-parent structure and generally have more opportunities due to financial ease of two adults. This is your U.S. Census data. We all know that. We know cases that are different from that, right? Probably far more. The single-parent family consists of one parent raising one or more children on their own. This family may include a single mother, child, single dad with his kids, a single person with their kids. The single-parent family is the biggest change society has seen in terms of changes in the family structure. 1 in 4 children is born to a single mother. Single-parent families are generally close and find ways to work together to solve problems. I was raised by a single mother for most of my life until she remarried, right? Single mothers have to be strong. Single mothers have to be focused. They have to be solid, okay? I'm married a single mother. I forgot that. You would have reminded me of that. But I can remember things that my mother did as a child where we never really saw her struggle because she was so strong and she had to be strong. She had to be both mother and father, okay? We have some awesome single mothers in this church. I'm looking at a few of them right now. So we understand the struggle of the single mother. The Bible speaks of a number of different single women who had kids. Because we don't hear about any divorce in the Bible, when you see a single woman in the Bible, it's normally because her husband died, okay? And there was a woman in 2 Kings chapter 4. She was a widow. It's an example of a mother who will do what she has to do to protect and provide for her children. She was low on resources. Her husband had died. And in your private study time, you can look at this, 2 Kings chapter 4. And she was at her wit's end. Husband had died, the debts were building up, and at that time in society, when you had debt, your kids were your collateral. Okay, imagine that now, right? They don't come take the car, they come take the kids, and they put the kids into slavery. But she obviously didn't want that, so she needed resources to generate, to pay the debt that her husband left, who was a man of God and was a prophet. So throughout the process, she was led by the prophet Elijah to stretch beyond ways that she would normally have to stretch. Sound familiar for any single mothers? Going far and beyond your normal capabilities, okay? Doing what you have to do to make sure that things don't fall apart. So upon listening to him, and this is the story of the widow and the oil, there were a number of vases, there was a continuously pouring oil. But the main thing in the story is the provisions that were made by God at the time that she really needed it, when she kept her faith. And that's something that is solid and consistent in a single-parent family, especially with a single mother. In spite of all her problems, she still held firm in the grip of faith. She needs help, faith with the possibility of losing her son because of her debt, and she had already lost her strong, God-fearing husband. There may be single mothers faced with that daily, and through their faith in God's grace, they succeed, they excel. We look at another type of family, the childless family, which really isn't common today. I mean, husband and wife, I guess without kids, are more, I don't know if more couples aren't having kids now. I don't have a stat on that, but one of the 6 main types of family is a childless family, and that's a couple that doesn't have children. Now, that may be by design or that may be by choice. I have an aunt, she never had kids. But she was the greatest aunt in the world. She was everybody's auntie. You know, she showed up at all the parties and all the graduations. She had no kids, she had no spare time. but she had a love for kids as if she had kids of her own. While most people think of family as including children, there are couples who either cannot or choose not to have children. The childless family is sometimes the forgotten family, as it does not meet the traditional standards set by family. But childless families consist of two partners living and working together, and many childless families take on the responsibility of other family members. You don't have any kids, you can babysit, right? When you had a childless situation in the Bible, it normally came through the process when a woman was barren. Okay, she was unable to have a child, right? She was unable to have a child as a result that she was barren. Where's my cup? A situation where that happened, so the father and son, and I want to say father and son trio, but examples of childless families that were in the Bible. One that comes to mind is the Abraham-Sarah situation, Isaac and Rebekah, and Jacob and Rachel. Now, the interesting thing about that family is that was father and son all the way down the line. Each situation repeated itself. And the reasons for their barrenness is explained in the Bible, but the most important thing is the choices that they made to, I don't want to say bypass God's decision, okay? Where they're thinking that they want to do it on their own. We know with Abraham and Sarah. Sarah wanted Abraham to go and lay with the handmaiden, and we see how that worked out. With Isaac and Rebekah and Jacob and Rachel, the situations were similar, where there was a lot of pressure put on them because they didn't have children, because you were looked on as a little bit worthless. How do we look at people today without any kids? I mean, you think same way? So if you don't have any kids, people think something's wrong with you. That can't possibly be true. So I'm saying you're smart, yeah. I mean, at my age, you couldn't pay me any amount of money to do it again. School and graduations and pageants, sporting events, no. But there are families that do, and there are many young families, and it's good for them too. So we don't have an overall opinion on childless families. Okay. Can you give advice if you don't have children? Should you give like people like parental advice? Oprah. Like people? Oprah. I'm sorry? Okay. No. Go ahead, finish this. Mm-hmm. They're able to do it. And I jokingly said Oprah because she gets a lot sometimes for her position on child issues and parenting. People say she didn't have any kids. I don't really think. I think you can love like a mother. And again, I don't want to cross any boundaries here, motherhood and the whole process. But I think you can love a child, you know, in the same way, or in some way comparison as mother, if you don't have a child of your own. I think it's just a natural part of women to do it. But there are women who decide not to have kids. So you're saying that you can give advice if you don't have kids. You can be real strong and out there and out in front. Okay. Okay. All right. Mhm. Okay. I just thought about a real scary question. Could you imagine your life if you were childless? The mothers that are here? Oh, man. I just threw that one right back there, and you just caught it right there. Yes, ma'am. Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's not about the commitment thing because the sons you're talking about are all in committed relationships. So they're not trying to abscond from any commitment. Okay. No kids. You're not getting another one? Wow. Oh, you break it out like that, huh? You break out the check. How old are they when do they get it? How old are they when you show them that? Because kids ask a lot of questions. Let me start over with John. Sister J, I'm going to ask a scary question. Have you ever imagined being without children and as much as we love the boys? You thought about it. Does it cross your mind? You didn't want to think about that answer for a minute? Right. Right. And hindsight, as we know, hindsight is always 20/20. And us families who participate in sports with our kids, it's always easy to sit in the stands and say what the coach should have did and should not have done. Hindsight's always 20/20, so it's always look back. But I bet if you look at your experiences with your sons and with your family as well, you'll value them more than anything else in your life. And I know that you do have that situation. Okay. Okay. Now, as far as the childless families, for medical reasons, marriages without children have every right to pray and ask others to pray for them so that God may grant them the blessing of fatherhood, motherhood. However, they must finally accept God's will for their lives. He knows what is best. Because there are families out there who can't, who can't conceive. They're very expensive measures. Is your hand up, sis? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, kids, like I said, at my age, I'm 52, so I don't want to be 70 at a high school graduation, with a blanket on my lap, nodding off. I just don't want to do that, So I say, I'll live vicariously, as most grandparents do, through the kids. You see them and they come and go. I'm sorry? Why am I kidding my? Well, 72. Okay. Newborns are 72? Okay. Well, yeah. Well, I mean, I wouldn't want, and you got it. You got my point. I know exactly what you're doing. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean, and look, to each his own. And if you notice when I said it, I said I don't want to be 72, 73 in the middle of June, sitting in the stands, waiting for my kid, probably with an S or T as his last name, and you're going to be out there all day until they call all the names, and I'm 72. I'd rather not do that, maybe for my grandkid, but that's where we are. The next family we're going to talk about is a step family, which hits personally home with me. How many of us are familiar or involved in a, make it the hands fly up, or a step family? Some people went like this, they don't want to, yeah, okay. Over half of all marriages end in divorce, and many of these individuals choose to get remarried. This creates the step or blended family, which involves two separate families merging into one new unit. How easy can that be? It's hard. Takes by all parties. Okay, somebody new coming in, the whole new sheriff is in town concept. I have stepkids now. Blessed for me again, they're near adulthood, so they're on autopilot. You know, we don't, you know, we interact, you know, we live, you know, we do the things, but it's not, I don't consider it as challenging it would be as if they were smaller kids. Of course, with young adults, you still have the issues, but it's nothing that I would have imagined if they were smaller kids. But it is a balancing act, okay? And it requires balance. And it requires tact, because you have to be really careful on how you say things to people who aren't used to living with you. Trust me. All righty. Step families are about as common as the nuclear family, although they tend to have more problems such as adjustment periods and discipline issues. Step families need to learn to work together and also work with the other partners to ensure that these family units run smoothly. That's another big bump ahead there with the exes, right? That can be an issue if that situation hasn't been handled. Okay? Can make a situation more challenging. And the kids often can take advantage of that, right? And play one side against the other to really get what they want. Kids are very shrewd. But the step family is one probably of the 6 most popular. When we look at the Bible and we look at an example of a step family in the Bible, anyone come to mind? Jesus. Joseph was Jesus' stepfather. Okay? Well, I mean, he didn't have to deal with another man, but again, and I know you've heard this taught, you've heard this sermon many times. I mean, you know, she comes to Joseph and, you know, she says, I've got some great news, and I've got some great news. I'm pregnant, and it's God's child. Okay? And he had to think immediately, how would he step up and handle it? I know how you would handle it. CJ, I was pointing at you. Yeah. I know how you would, I know, but very peacefully. But that's the step family that jumps out to mind, and that family grew and spread to nations just from that one foundation. Anybody ever thought of Joseph as the stepfather, though, really? Anybody ever thought of Joseph as the stepfather? Right? Because they don't really say much about Joseph. You don't really think about Joseph, right? Okay. The grandparent family. Grandparents are key. Grandparents are important. Okay, I just lost the world's greatest grandmother, other than yours, my grandmother last April. Okay, and I still have one left, and she's 94. Grandmothers play an integral part. They let you get away with stuff when you go to their homes. You know, they help keep the peace. They buy great gifts. Many grandparents today are raising their grandchildren for a variety of reasons. 1 in 14 children are raised by grandparents, and the parents are not present in the child's life. There's no right or wrong answer when it comes to what's the best type of family structure. We have extended families. An extended family stretches, right? You may have people in the house that aren't related to you. You may have people, cousins, uncles. Anybody have lived in that kind of household where second and third cousins were there? And you guys were all one unit, just wasn't mom, dad, and you and your sibling, okay? The extended family is very popular today. The extended family structure consists of 2 or more adults who are related, either by blood or marriage, living in the same home. The family includes many relatives living together and working toward common goals. Many families, as I said, extended families include cousins, aunts, and uncles. The church, I feel, is the best example of the extended family, right? Because as you've come and as you've accepted Christ into your life and you've become a part of a local church, your family has expounded, okay, has extended. Just by the fact that you are now a believer, and also by the fact that you are part of a local family, a local assembly family that we consider family. Now, do we all always get along? No? There are people here who didn't like me 4 years ago when I first came. Some of you are here tonight, but we're all family now. And you can't choose your family. Some of you are snickering. You know, the very few people who didn't like me when I first. Yep. Look. Yep. I see. Some of them looking down at the floor laughing. Some of them about to fall out their seat laughing. All right. But the extended family is just that. It's not necessarily blood. Okay. In an extended family household, the adults can share their worries, stresses, responsibilities with family members like their parents who genuinely care for their well-being. Sharing worries, stresses, responsibilities with other family members, confessing our sins to one another, speaking and sharing with one another, okay? I can talk to Deacon CJ if I'm not particularly having a good day, and I'll feel better. When Deacon Arnold answers his phone, I can speak to him about stuff, and he'll kind of get me straight. We have those people in our family that we can rely on, and we should. So, let's get back to our word here as we close out. Family, forgiveness, acceptance, maturity and growth, intentionality, loyalty, love, and then why. Can anybody think of any other word that they would like to apply? And it doesn't have to fit with the whole thing there. I just did that to try to give a visual for it to make more sense. I didn't have a why. I think the why is why. My wife asked about yoke earlier, and should we be evenly yoked? But that's between a husband and a wife. Okay. Just yoked? Okay. All right. So you know I'm going to hear that now. She's going to be like, when I told you that earlier, you said that. Yeah, you said that. Da, da, da. I put Y, but we're going to put that up there too. Yoked. With the D or just a K? No D. All right. Okay. Any other words come to mind with family? She said ED. Thank you, sweetheart. Sister Shanice, family, what does it mean to you? What word comes to mind? Other than one that's been written up there. Family. Tonight we're talking about family, and when you say the word family, when you see the word family, when you hear the word family, what do you think of? What comes to mind? Because we see family in a number of different ways. Okay, support. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Yielding. Okay. Y'all breaking out the words now. And yielding, I'm thinking you mean compromising. Okay. Is there much compromising going on in families? I would think that's where it started, right? I'm sorry? What if someone is? You say, suppose someone is just learning that? I would say great. If I would say awesome, because that's the beginning of the process. But I think, and again, I'm not licensed to guarantee what I'm about to say, but I suspect that all of us have this in us to some extent, because we grew up in families. You know, we grew up with other humans around us. Somebody showed us motherly love. Somebody gave us discipline. You know, somebody was the person who was irresponsible. You know, we had these people around, or whatever their names were, but we know the basic concept of family. Now, because of that experience, how do we decide to see it and view it? That's, you know, that's a whole different thing. But the fact remains, sister, that family is the anchor. Your family is the anchor. And even if you only consider it just your group, you're their anchor, and they are yours. Would you agree? Don't just say it because everybody's looking at you, because if you just said no, they'd have been like, wow. But do you mean it? Okay. All right, forgiveness. Being in a family requires forgiveness. While forgiveness starts in the heart, I feel true forgiveness starts in the family. Is it easier to forgive a family member versus somebody in the street, as my mother would say? It's easier to forgive the person in the street? Okay. Why? Family should what? Family should know better. Expectations? Okay. In the Bible, we see Joseph. Joseph forgave his brothers. Joseph was the son of Jacob, who doted on his son and I don't want to say really pumped him up, but saw him as the visionary that he presented himself to be. Okay? Now, I get a lot of crap for people say my daughter is my favorite child, and people will say, oh, that child must be your favorite child. You're nodding your head. Is that possible? Is it possible to have a favorite child? You should. That do. And often, said child who is the target of that is normally met with a lot of scorn. Oh, she's the favorite child, so on and so forth, a bunch of negative things, right? I personally think the favorite child, I do think that there's one child that, if you have a few, there's one child that gets you, and you two just seem to get it than the other kids. Not that the other kids are distant, and I feel that way. That's what it's. I love both of my kids equally, but I do think sometimes you have a different relationship with your kids, and I have a different relationship with my mother than the relationship that my mother and my sister had. Okay, but that comes as a result of a lot of forgiveness that wasn't given. In the Bible, we saw Esau forgave his brother Jacob for stealing his birthright. Okay, he took what was rightfully his. In that time, in the alignment of the sons, Esau was supposed to get the fortune of the father. But his brother Jacob jumped ahead of him and stole the birthright, and the rest is history. Anybody having something taken from you by a family member? Okay. And while we're talking about forgiving, on the cross, Jesus forgave those who crucified him. So when you look at it in that aspect, and we take it and we keep it in the Bible, we see families very similar to ours who overcame heartache and pain to forgive. And we have to wonder, why is it so hard for us to do it? And could you imagine if your brother or sister sold you into slavery? Right? Yeah. Well, I'll just make it real. You had a family member that got you locked up for a lot of years. I mean, they put you behind a wall. And the next time that family member saw you, you would think that it wouldn't be the best greeting in the world. Okay? But yet through forgiveness, that was overcome. Does anybody have a situation that they struggle with, that they feel comfortable talking about with forgiveness? Was your hand up, sis? What's up? Okay. All right. Okay. Wow. Okay. Is that really forgiveness, though? I don't know, but everybody has their way of doing it. Family also requires acceptance. You know the saying that we love the sinner, we hate the sin? We hear that a lot, right? And we have family members that may be outside of the family of Christ, who may not be a part of God's family, but yet we still have to love them the same. We all have unsaved family members, right? We have family members that live their lives completely different than the way that we live ours, but do we love them any less as a result? We don't necessarily accept their ways. We understand their condition, but we don't love them any less. As Christians, we must love the sinner and hate the sin. 1 Peter 3:9 says, do not repay evil with evil or insult with insult. On the contrary, repay evil with blessing. Because of this, you were called so that you may inherit a blessing. Paul says in Romans to accept the ones whose faith is weak without quarreling or over disputable matters. We all have that family member that as soon as they got saved, everybody else in the family were heathens, right? And they were very judgmental because they've accepted Christ in their lives, but then they became very judgmental of those who didn't walk with Christ at that time. Paul tells us to do it, to approach those who are weak in their faith with kid gloves, without quarreling or making disputable matters. He also goes later on in Romans and says that, you then, why do you judge your brother or sister? Or why do you treat them with contempt? For we will stand before God's judgment seat, and let us therefore make every effort to do what leads to peace and to mutual edification. You have that family member that you can argue about the same way that they live their lives every time you see them. Or that young person who's not doing what he should be, and you constantly got a pound in there to the point where they don't want to see you. Because they know that every time they see you that they're going to have to discuss that. But how do we accept it without condoning it? What's that? Mind your own business? Okay. Let's see if it works out that way. It's funny, I overheard my wife having a conversation with her son that I remember my grandmother telling me years ago. She was giving him ideas on where he needs to go and find work. Because young people right now, first of all, it's tough to find work, and they want to do a lot of creative stuff that, a W-2 don't come with. They want to do real creative stuff. I don't want to sit behind a desk. They got all these rules, and they're like 20. And they say, I don't want to do this and that. So she's telling them, she says, listen, what I think you should do is you should go and get yourself pretty much a W-2 job, and where you've got the steadiness coming in with the benefits, and then you can go and do all the other creative stuff that you want to do. And I heard in my ear my grandmother telling me, maybe, 52? Maybe 30 years ago? More than 35 years ago? Get a job at the bus company. You can work there, you'll retire and everything. Not to put that down. I have friends that have done it and they're doing very well, but it's just something that I didn't want to do. And she had to accept that. Okay? But we have to accept the fact that people in our family don't always do what we want them to do. Nothing bothers you more, is that, especially when they ask you for advice and you tell them something, and then they still don't do it. Yeah. Did our hand go up or no? Okay. So we have to be accepting, but we have to be careful that we're not too compromising. Maturity and growth. God said to go forth and to multiply. In his word, God tells us to be fruitful and multiply. God's plan for families are for them to not only grow in size, but for these families to grow in him. Okay? The size of the family is great, but having a family that's focused on God and God's principles is the key. Hebrews 6:1, therefore let us move beyond the elementary teachings about Christ and be taken toward maturity, not laying again the foundation of repentance from acts that lead to death and of faith in God. What he's saying is there should be a gradual process. There should be continuing growth. When I lived in New York, I had a really good friend who lived in the Bronx in what they call the projects. I have those out here. It's subsidized housing. Chicago, projects, you know what I'm talking about. But what I found strange as we would talk is that he lived there and they had other family members who lived in the building. But it was generational. The mother had lived there. The grandmother had lived in. Now, there are a number of many different economic reasons that we can't touch on. But just to the naked eye, you would say, okay, at some point, you would think that the family would no longer need to be in subsidized housing. There are a number of different reasons why they were. But you would think on the outside, you would say, wow, okay, how does that progress? How do you spin out of that? There should be growth. Examples of how families need to grow. How do we grow as a family? Without creating more. What are the other ways that we can grow as a family? I'm sorry? Quality time? Education? Okay. What'd you say in the back? Sunday dinner? That's good quality time. Families must be intentional. Families must be intentional. They must have a plan and it must be passed on. Every parent has a design for the lives of their kids, the way that they want them to go. You know exactly, you may not know the profession, but you know the type of men that you want your sons to be. Correct? I'm sorry? You know what they're going to be. Yeah, so you already got, so your plan is intentional. Sister Alicia as well, Sister Donnell? Yeah. And you too as well as parents. Family members teach each other, serve one another, and share life's joys and sorrows. Families provide a setting for personal growth. Family is the single most influence in a child's life. You have a captive audience. Children do a lot of what they see, and they absorb a lot. An intentional relationship with God helps teach a family about the values and behaviors that are good or bad for the group. In the Bible, when he speaks of intentionality, Moses speaks in his sermon in the book of Deuteronomy that you shall put these words of mine in your heart and your soul. You shall bind them as a sign on your heart and fix them as an emblem on your forehead. Teach them to your children, talking about them when you are at home and when you are away, when you lie down and when you rise. Remember these commands and cherish them. Tie them on your arms and wear them on your foreheads as a reminder, teaching them to your children. He wants you to be intentional. Make sure that your children are aware of the Word of God and aware of the godly life and the responsibilities and the requirements therein. As we come down to the next to the last one, loyalty and love. Paul wrote to Timothy, if anyone does not provide for his relatives and especially for his immediate family, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Can you love your family and not provide for them? Can that go hand in hand? No? Oh, okay. Provision is key. You want to say something? You had a look on your face when I said, can you? Okay. How many times have we not been loyal or showed love by a family member? I mean, think about it. You don't have to, we have to come out, but just think about that. Loyalty and love in the family go hand in hand. Family is important because it provides love, support, and framework of values to teach each of its members. Then there's also the aspect of tough love. Everybody familiar with tough love? Given it? Received it? Okay. That's one of the things that's definitely better to give than to receive is tough love. John 13:34-35 says, a new commandment I give to you, that you love one another just as I have loved you. You also are to love one another. By this, all people will know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another. So love is the key. But that's a challenge sometimes, right? Because we mentioned earlier about you can love but not like a family member. So we get to the point now where we say why? Why family? Why do we need family? Why do we need to be yoked? What are the life application skills that we can look here and we can say the purpose of being a part of a family, a growing family? Everybody likes to be a part of something that's growing, to say that they're a part of it. Posterity? Okay. Okay. Support? And support comes in a number of different ways, just not financially. We tend to think about the financial because that's what we have to deal with in the real on a day-to-day basis. But there's a lot of other support that comes from family members that is just as strong as a check. When we look at the life application, we look at as God's family, as true members of God's family, of his growing and ever-expanding family, the family that started in Genesis and came all the way through, okay? The family that relates to a lot of the families that we've grown up in. The keys that we need are forgiveness, acceptance, maturity and growth, have intentionality and focus, be loyal and loving, and be yielding and yoked. And with prayer, all things are possible. Amen? So, thank you guys for this time tonight. I'm hoping that you got something from this. Any questions or comments? So somebody's going to call that family member tonight and apologize? No? It didn't get you there, right? That didn't get you to that point, right? Yeah. Okay. I got you. All right, Sister Darcy.